Hello, it's Denise from Women Beyond a Certain Age. Now I'm hyper excited today, and people know that that's not usually a really good thing because then I sputter and stutter and I spit because I'm too excited. But here's the reason. My friend Jaden is here today. Now, most of you know Jaden is Jaden Hare from Steamy Kitchen, but Jaden, much like Prince, has changed her name. Okay, and rightly so. Jaden, hello, welcome to Women Beyond a Certain Age.
I am so happy to reconnect with you again. Oh my God, it's been years since I've given you a nice big hug. So virtual hug here, right through the internet right now.
Now, let me tell people, Jaden, a little bit, and then we're gonna get right to you. I knew Jaden from when her blog came out 17 years ago, and we'll talk about that because that's just extraordinary. I knew Jaden, we had many mutual friends when you first started, when the blogging community was very new. So many of the people were friends and we worked with them, different things. And then Jaden did come to ICP once or twice. So I saw you at ICP, Jaden, but mostly, and we talked once or twice. And once I had a question about something and you were kind enough to answer it. And I know we've had conversations. So when all of a sudden, a few years ago, you weren't on my radar like you had been. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
and
yes.
I saw that you'd moved to Las Vegas and you were closer to your family. And I thought, well, that makes sense, meaning maybe your parents were aging out or just whatever the reason. But then when I've seen you reappear,
like from the ashes,
I'm telling you, you're a phoenix. And you know what? What better story to celebrate, Jaden, than changes and new success? And I mean that when I talk about success, I mean, I love money, but I'm not usually talking about money success. I'm talking about personal successes that people go through, because that's really what makes life worth living to me and for your friends. So I need you to tell us, just tell us a little bit. Yes, you had Steamy Kitchen and you still have Steamy Kitchen. And what happened?
I do. Yeah. 17 years ago, I started this little tiny food blog. What happened was I had just given birth, so pumped full of hormones and emotions, right? And we had just moved to Florida, like from San Francisco. And like San Francisco is like culinary Mecca, right?
Yes.
To this little tiny town called Bradenton, Florida. And I was at a restaurant called Bangkok, Tokyo. And I looked up the sign. I'm like, wait, Bangkok, Tokyo. Like in San Francisco, you would never have a Bangkok and a Tokyo. It'd be a Bangkok or a Tokyo, right? And so I'm like, okay, this is a small town. So, you got to, mash together certain cuisines to make a restaurant. And I walked inside, I was waiting for my to-go order. And I overheard this woman sitting at the sushi bar. And she said, she was talking to her friend on her cell phone. And she said, meet me at the Chinese restaurant. I'm having sushi. And I'm like, wait a second, where am I? And that's when I decided, okay, I got to do something about this. I have no culinary background. I never went to culinary school. I've never even worked at a restaurant, even as a waitress. And I thought, okay, I'm going to start teaching Asian cooking classes here in Bradenton, Florida. I'm going to teach people the difference between fish sauce and soy sauce, and the difference between Laotian cuisine and Vietnamese cuisine. So that's how I started Steamy Kitchen. And once I started, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. This is like a tribe. This is my family. I love blogging, and I'm going to figure out a way to make money and make business out of food blogging. And back then, Pinterest was not even a thing yet. Instagram was not even born. So, way back when, Denise, I'm sure you remember, this was the whole different world in the food space, in the online space.
It was. And honey, as to see it grow, to see the shifts that it's created. Do you know what I mean? Good. I think, to me, all of the changes have been great. Do I think, the only thing that I think that's been bad sometimes in Pinterest or Instagram is it creates a false narrative about how people's lives are. But you know what? If that's what you want to believe, okay, believe it. If you can't see that young woman has had an enormous amount of plastic surgery and uses filters, that's on you.
Right. Yeah, to each their own, right?
There are
It has evolved so quickly.
huge.
Yeah. There's good and bad in everything, right? So,
Right.
the good parts of Instagram is it inspires you to be creative. It inspires you to learn something new and to see something, the world in different eyes.
That's
Is
right.
how I view it. And so, that's what I love about the online world. But yeah, it's very different these days.
You know what? If things don't change, Jaden, if the world doesn't change, if your job doesn't change, if your children don't grow, do you know what I mean? If you don't move, how boring life would be. I mean, you know what I mean? The challenges of life make life more interesting, whether people want to believe that or not. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you and I know this. I look back and I think to myself, I could have handled that a little bit better when I look back at things. But if you're doing the best you can and things have to change, then I suggest you jump on the horse and ride and change with it. Do you know what I mean?
I always say you either change or die. There's
That's
no other option. There's no such thing as staying exactly the same if you are a living being. There's no such thing. You can be a rock or you can, every living thing either changes, adapts, or dies. That's just the reality of it.
Now, tell people, Jaden, you don't have to, but you have an entire staff that works with you. So even during COVID, Steamy Kitchen kept going. You make money from it, and you don't have to work all the time on it, so that you are free to be able to do new things. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. I went through Steamy Kitchen has gone through lots of different rebirths and lives, I like to say. Right now I have a beautiful staff. I have Amanda who helps me run the business, and she runs everything, but she's based in Mexico. I have an assistant here. Her name is Rae. She helps me with social media. She helps me with video editing, and it just has so many talents. Then I also have a tech staff that's based in Washington. So I have people that help me run Steamy Kitchen because it's a big site. We get like 3 to 5 million page views a month on Steamy Kitchen. It just keeps on going.
That's a big site.
Yeah. And, I built, I don't know if you're familiar with Tim Ferriss, but he wrote this book called 4-Hour Workweek. And that's exactly what I built. It was a 4-hour workweek business where I have systems in place and I have a business that kind of just runs by itself. And so that, like you said, it gives me the brain space and the emotional space and the financial breathing space to pursue different things that I love doing. So whether that be creating art or, diving into, growing mushrooms that we'll talk about a little bit later, it gives me that brain space, the heart space, and the financial breathing space.
Jaden, it's admirable. And let me tell you, because you are so honest, and we will talk about, Jaden has a new book out, not what she has 3 cookbooks. You want to know more about Jaden, and Cindy puts this all up, Jaden, when we broadcast here. People will go to your website, you have other sites, they can go to the Steamy Kitchen. There's a lot of information. And you've been very open and honest about it, which is why when I saw you again, and the reason, Jaden, and I'm sure you'd been on Twitter, I do Instagram, not that much, but I'm on Facebook. So when all of a sudden, because that's my generation. Well, and the only reason is that with Twitter, and this was my thing, I would say things, Jaden, when I was speaking or being somewhere, and people would repeat it and they would go viral, but then I would get like really nasty. You know what I mean? People didn't. Right. And I found Twitter to just be a toilet. So I decided I didn't want to swim in Twitter. So that's why when I lose people, I know it's just because I'm not probably on a platform that they are. But when I saw you on Facebook and you were so honest about that you'd had some life changes.
I did.
Yeah, and these are beautiful changes. And yet your business has done nothing but better. And you've resurfaced with a whole new attitude and a whole new life, which is what Women Beyond for me is all about. See, I think women are the most adaptable creatures on the planet. We have to be. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And so tell everybody who's listening that, because it all sounds very glossy.
It does sound glossy, doesn't it? I've been through
and
I've been through a lot of heartabeartache to get to where I am. Yeah. Because, you know, the highlight reel is nice and shiny and beautiful, right? It sparkles. But underneath the highlight reel, all the work that went into it and all the heartache and pain. I was doing a lot of television when I first started Steamy Kitchen. Like, you know, food blogging just came and we're like, oh my gosh, a food blogger, you know, this is great. Come on TV and talk about it. So, you know, my career in it, I got a cookbook deal within 6 months of starting the blog. It happened so fast. And it happened so fast that all of a sudden I woke up and I was like, fuck, where am I? You know, where I'm in New York, my kids are babies and they're in Florida. I never got to see them because I was always traveling for business and going to Chicago for a television taping, and then going to New York. And I was in the lobby of the Food Network waiting for a meeting. And I was like, why am I so unhappy? Like, I'm so close to getting to where I wanted and having my own show, but why am I so unhappy? And it was because I wasn't running the business and doing life on my terms. It was on someone else's terms. And it was the producer saying, okay, come tomorrow to Chicago, we'll tape this. Yeah. And I wasn't seeing my babies, you know, and I just realized, okay, I can do anything I want. I can build this business and shape it in any way that I want. How do I want to shape this business? And so I had to reinvent Steamy Kitchen to be something that was purely online based, where I wasn't at the whim of a producer, right? And, you know, social, like you mentioned on Twitter, like Twitter is a toilet. It absolutely is a toilet. You know, I left Twitter when I had over 100,000 followers. I'm like, I quit this because this is so toxic. And I spiraled in a really deep depression where I refused to work. I hid from everybody. I never went to another conference. And even if I did have a conference that I was putting on, I would hide in the back. And I did not want to talk to people because I was so depressed. I was in a marriage that I was married to my best friend. Great. But it was a loveless marriage. I had sex twice a year. You know, I did not feel beautiful. I was so depressed about myself that I couldn't let my ex-husband love me as well. So it really was a dark place.
I tell you, it's the most honest comment. And the reason I'm so grateful that you're sharing this, I know that there are hundreds of millions of women out there, hopefully not that many, but I know there's people that are listening to this. I know a lot of women that are unhappy, okay? And they're depressed. Now, is it dramatic enough that they need to get divorced?
No.
What I'm saying, I know, Jen, I told you this, my first marriage, when I said I'm leaving, he seemed so surprised, okay? And it was dramatic because I'd spent the last 10 years putting him through college, dental school, surgery school, you name it. So I was in deep, okay? Right. So which was my generation, more generational. I hope young women still don't do this. But, you know, it was, I worked, I could make money, he went to school. So when all of a sudden I said, I'm getting out, people said, you can't do that, Denise, you know, because our finances were all tied into the future of his success. And Jaden, it's a very difficult situation. And so, but the same thing, I didn't love him anymore.
Right.
Okay?
Well,
it was simple.
In my case, I did love him. I didn't love me. I became someone that was just dark. It was like almost like a black hole. And if I didn't love me, how do I expect someone else to love me? And, I had a lot of work to do. And I started with like movement in my body. The biggest way to create change is to move your body. And so I ended up losing 40 pounds. I started weightlifting and I started, paying attention to myself and the way I looked, because I in my marriage, I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel desired, right? Sex twice a year does not sustain a woman, right? Or anybody for that matter, even animals, right? So I started loving myself and I started taking care of myself. Losing the weight and shedding the weight was huge. And that gave me the confidence to say, okay, what's next? Because now that if I can do this, I can do anything. And, divorce was the right option for me. That's not the right choice for everybody, but that was the right option for me. And that was like 3 years ago over 3.5 years ago that we separated. And Oh my gosh, I'm like I'm just brimming with joy and self-love now. There's a big difference between the black hole that I was in and, the space that I command now.
One of the things you just said though, Jaden, I don't think anybody can ever go wrong taking care of themselves. And again, what you said, women are not always good at that. Okay. Women take care of their children and the dog and the mailman and their husband and their family and their parents. They don't always leave. When you say you were a black hole, I just wondered, Jaden, and I'm certainly not arguing with you. You know who you are. You sounded to me like you were just empty. Do you know what I mean? Because you couldn't love yourself. You were empty. Well, how exhausting. Of course, you just wanted to be alone. Do you know?
I filled that emptiness with alcohol is what I did. I would drink, I'm small. I'm 5, not even 5'2". Okay. I'm a small girl, I'm a petite girl, but I could outdrink any man. Years and years of being an alcoholic and drinking over a bottle of wine myself every single day by myself. That's what filled the emptiness in me and is so destructive.
I know. And again, not unusual.
Right. Not unusual at all. But I didn't think I wouldn't tell myself, oh, I'm not an alcoholic. I can control this. It's only wine. It's expensive wine. Alcoholics don't drink expensive wines. And then, over time, I'm like, well, this cheap wine tastes just as good as expensive wine. The spigot wine tastes just as good as my $40 bottle. And so, I would spigot wine every single night. And it was just so self-destructive. In the end, I know where we're getting to the point where what was the turnaround point? What was that aha moment? Yeah. And that big aha moment was, I was at a friend's house and I said, oh, I need coffee. Can you get me some coffee? He goes, I don't have coffee up here, but I'll be right back and I'll get you some. So he comes back with a cup of coffee and I'm like, well, where's yours? And he said, oh, I don't do coffee, but this is what I do. And he plops down a big mason jar full of mushrooms. And I'm like, what are you going to do? Make miso soup? It didn't compute. Like, I'm like, oh, these are just dried mushrooms, but they were, they were magic mushrooms. And he goes, this is my coffee. And he microdosed and he put I'll show you what it is. And I became so curious. This is just mushroom in this little capsule. And he taught me about microdosing. He taught me about, the benefits of microdosing. And then he set me off and I just started doing my own research. And I started like, oh my gosh, there is not a whole lot of research or clinical trials around psilocybin or magic mushrooms. And I just wanted to find out more. And I'd say this whole journey has absolutely changed my life. It's kind of like, taking all the filters off, all the Instagram filters off and just living life as is. And that was a massive shift in my life.
Well, honey, that's why when I saw you, so you were talking about, and so the listeners realize Jaden has a new book out called Microdosing. And it's microdosing in your journal. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name,
The Microdosing Guide and Journal is basically a daily journal for people who are on their microdosing journey, because this is also, it's actually not new. We've been using mushrooms for thousands of years, right? This is purely from nature. Like in the capsule, there's one ingredient and it's not from a pharmaceutical, it's from the forest, right? I created a journal because when I was going through my own microdosing journey, I was writing I was just writing notes on pieces of paper and then I would lose the papers and there was no really good way to track my progress. Got it. And I always say that if you don't track your progress, you never know where you are. Is something working or not working?
Okay. So I saw you advertising microdosing. At the moment that I read it, Jaden, I thought, do I know what that is? I just want to, and I just suggest to people, and there's a Kindle version. There's now a hard copy version on Amazon, or it will be on Amazon soon. So Jaden was kind enough to send me the PDF. And I've been reading this book for 2 days. It's so well written, Jaden.
Thank you.
I have to tell you. So one of the pages, what is microdosing? And you write, which I absolutely love, Microdosing can include a variety of substances, psychedelic or not. In fact, you might already be microdosing with caffeine or cannabis, sipping in an energy drink to battle that afternoon lull, or eating half a CBD gummy before bed are also forms of microdosing. So see, I think it's really important for people to understand, Jaden, which is why also, if they're interested at all, they have to read your book. But here's the reason. You're talking about drinking too much wine at nighttime. I know, I said this to you. I knew that you were playing more tennis, and there's nothing, but you were playing so much tennis.
Right.
What is she running from? I don't remember if you remember this, but because I worked with Jane Fonda years ago, her father, when she had those big, all her gyms, and it was fabulous. And she's such a wonderful woman, and she's had such a journey. But she was, this fitness guru with all the videos. And her father said to her one day, Jane, what are you running from? And she said, huh? Because there was just, she was doing 10 classes a day. Do you know what I mean? So it wasn't 2 or 3, she couldn't stop. So I think that speaking to microdosing, in your book, you also talk about ADD. You talk about how many people, see, this is to me, this all in the same ball of wax. How many people in America take Prozac? Okay. It's a mood elevator. It's a way to people. So it's been around, microdosing has been around probably since people, you know what I mean? Since Jesus was at the Last Supper. They were probably microdosing at the Last Supper. But I'm just saying, it's so phenomenal to me that you've done this research, because it's no different than any of the other things that people do. Do you know what I'm saying?
Like your cup of coffee in the morning, or my ex-father-in-law used to have his 7 and 7 at night, just one. And that was, that was the end of the ritual that signaled, time to relax.
Absolutely.
So there's many things that you can microdose with. And I'm pretty sure that most of us are microdosing on something. I think microdosing now is attached to psychedelics, which is great, because things like mushrooms, or some people microdose on LSD, and that's for creativity. But microdose, like the most important word in part of the word is micro. It's a subperceptual amount of a psychedelic. So that means if I take something and I feel it and I feel funny, I've taken too much. So it's beyond, it's a level below perceptual. And for me, this is like my daily vitamin. And it gives me just that breathing room to not spin. And as you were saying, you were so right. I was playing so much tennis every day, 3 times a day, but it was to run away from something else, and run away from unhappiness, and run away from marriage. And, I got my body moving. Okay. I lost all this weight. Great. Now I don't know what to do. I'm just going to keep moving my body because I know nothing else. And it keeps me from having to be stressed and stop realizing like, oh shit, I'm kind of unhappy, And so it was absolutely running away from something.
When I used to work, I loved what I did, Jaden, I'm not complaining, but I could work 50, 60 hours a week. Do you know what I mean? And Cindy, we worked all the time, but here's the thing. One night my husband said to me, Denise, and I would just come home then, take a shower, have a glass of wine, get in bed, go to sleep. He said to me one night, honey, I need to say to you, there's more to life than work and going to sleep. And when he first said it to me, I remember, well, that's the strangest comment I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I thought, because Jaden, I didn't really have any hobbies. I didn't, you know what I mean? Everything, it was just all about work, work. And then more work. And can we work and still write a book? Can we work and can I still do demos on Saturday? Can I work and still go on a cruise, but I work on the cruise? Yes. So, but it wasn't as apparent to me what I was doing, because I didn't want to look at it. And you've made this point, and you make this point in your book so well. When you have any behavior that's exaggerated, to me, it's time to really look inside. And not everyone wants to do that. Okay.
Right. That is so true. It's hard work.
It's hard
It's
work.
deep, dark work that has to be done. And I think we talked a little bit more earlier. Like it's either you change and adapt, or you die. There's no other choice for living beings. And to do the hard work is adapting and changing to, versus just treading water.
And when you talk about different brain disorders in your book, because I have had, and when I was a kid, it was just called ADD. I said that before. And now they call it ADHD. Now, Jaden, again, as a child, every report card said the same thing. We guess she's bright, but who really knows? She can't focus and she talks too much and she's hyperactive. They used to call us hyperactive in my generation.
Right.
She's hyperactive or she can't focus. So, but as I got older, now, could I do a lot of different things at once? Yes. Now that was a good skill for a chef. Do you know what I mean? I really could do 500 things at one time and do them all pretty well. But as I started to age, one night, again, when I'd met Kenny, my husband came home and he had a Time magazine with him and he held it up and it said ADH in adults. And he said, I brought this magazine for you. I said, what? He said, well, I think it could be helpful to you. And as I was reading it, Jaden, I thought, oh, no one ever diagnosed me. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I know that I went into therapy for several years, and her rule to me, which I always try to say to people, she taught me to prioritize, which was another word for focus.
Okay? Nice.
So, and I also went into therapy because I was tired of being depressed. Do you know what I mean? Again, the glossy outside, people say, oh, you've got it made. As different things happened in my career, I thought, this doesn't feel like I've got it made.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I had my own set of depression, which people never would believe me when I'd say I'm depressed. They'd say, oh, you're not. My parents, my sister would say, oh, you're always happy. You're not depressed. So it's a difficult thing to start on a journey when people won't even acknowledge it. You know what I mean?
Here's a scary stat is 1 in 10 Americans are on SSRIs.
Of course.
1 in 10. And the side effects of that medication is worse than the anxiety or depression sometimes, and for so many people to feel that anxiousness and depression, the label depression, and to take a pharmaceutical medication just to numb it. SSRIs will, yes, maybe help you with depression, but it also prevents you from feeling the highs of life as well, the big joys, and to feel happy. You're almost stunted on both ends, right?
I took Prozac, Jaden, I would say for about 8 or 9 years, between 50 and 60. Now, I succumbed to them, and I really mean it, but I did it for exactly that. I was just tired of the highs and lows, okay? I felt like I was always fighting the highs and lows. But then one day, and I will say this, and this is just my own body and what I'm feeling. I know that hormones played an enormous role in depression with me and highs and lows. So as I was approaching menopause, I realized that I didn't need Prozac any longer, that I was going to ride out what I had. And my menopause symptoms were for a very long time, but not that horrible. So I just learned to deal, you know what I mean? I took some bioidentical hormones, but to be honest with you, I couldn't really it didn't make enough difference for me. And my gynecologist said, if I were you, I'd get off of them because can be side effects from that. So what you're saying and what I read in your book, honey, is so appropriate. And then I just learned that I could work these things. But the day I said to my doctor, I'm not taking the Prozac anymore, I'll never forget it. Oh, you can't just quit.
You can't just quit.
Just quit. I said, what are you talking about? And I'd read about it. And people would say, oh, no, you can't just quit. I said, well, you know what? I think I am. I'm just going to quit and I'm going to be just fine. And guess what? I quit. I'm just saying for me again, I'm not a doctor. I'm certainly not giving people medical advice. But I think, and you say this in your book several times about taking control of your own life.
Right.
And we're not taught to do that.
No. And here's the funny thing is like, we are so good at taking care of everything else about our bodies. Like if we're in pain, we go to the doctor. If we, to go on a walk every day, or some people go to the gym and work out to live longer and to be healthier. But you know how many Americans actually take charge of taking care of the most important organ in your entire body, which is your brain? The most important organ in your whole entire body. Like without the brain, you don't exist, right? And that's why I want to encourage people to, do research, dive into your Google search engine, and like look things up on how to increase your brain capacity or take care of your brain. And things like psychedelics aside, functional mushrooms like lion's mane, chaga, reishi, turkey tail, things that are, just mushrooms that have medicinal benefits. They're proven to help you with your cardiovascular health, but more importantly, your brain health, especially lion's mane.
I love that section of your book. And I told Jaden right before we started recording, Jaden, I'm going to a nursery, getting myself. That was one of the videos that I watched of you, honey, that I absolutely loved. And also that's all this information, all Jaden's information. When we broadcast this, we will put it up. I'm going to grow some mushrooms. I want to grow lion's mane mushrooms.
I love it. Oh gosh, it is. Growing lion's mane mushrooms are so much fun because they don't look like regular mushrooms. They look like this giant puffy ball with cascading tentacles that look like the mane of a lion. That's why it's called lion's mane. But it is so good for your brain health. And there's hundreds of studies done on lion's mane mushrooms and other functional medicinal mushrooms that are outside of psychedelics aside, that are just so good for you.
You know what's interesting to me, Jaden? People hear the word psychedelic and I think they're frightened of it. Okay. Now, I grew up in the 60s. I practically dated Timothy Leary. Okay. I am not afraid of the word psychedelic. I also need people to know. I ate magic mushrooms when in the 70s, in the early 70s. They grew wild in Canada, and we would buy these bags of them, and it just tasted like you were chewing dirt. They tasted horrible.
Yeah.
You would eat them. And of course, in the 60s also, at the beginning of the time, we ate mescaline. Okay. None of this was all just, we ate. No one said, oh, these drugs can kill you. We all said, no, free, don't tell us what to do and free my mind. And right. So Grace Slick talked about it every day. So in my generation, that was not a scary word. I knew what it meant. It meant, and what to me it's always meant is mind expansion.
Right.
Do you know that so it's fascinating to me. I know that you told me, and I read it in your book, that it's illegal. Psychedelics are still illegal in our country. Well, so was marijuana 20 years ago.
Right.
Okay. So my feeling is and I know so many people that never smoked pot. Of course, my generation, we all smoked pot. Right. And honey, and then there was cocaine. Now, there's never a more horrible drug than any of us should have been taking than cocaine. But I had a good run on a couple of years.
So actually, I want to talk about something old and something new. The old is the mushrooms still taste like crap. They still taste like dirt. Okay. That has not changed. And you can still go out and in many areas of the country, of the world, and pick mushrooms. And that is the one ingredient. Then what's new about it is microdosing. And what's new about it is a lot of the studies that are coming out. So John Hopkins did a study, and they said that psilocybin assisted therapy is so helpful for PTSD, for trauma, for anxiety, for depression. And in fact, it's 40% more effective than SSRIs. Wow. So what would you rather take? A pharmaceutical that gives you side effects, or go out in nature, pick one little thing that as God has given us and microdose that for anxiety, for depression, for PTSD or ADHD, or all the other acronyms that we've come up with as humans, right? To put labels on something that is really is a human experience.
That's brilliant. Jaden. That's a brilliant way to put it. No, I told Jaden and I had a pre-pro, we hadn't talked. So we talked last week. And as I said to you, Jaden, I mean this and this again in our society, people that may have never smoked dope, all of a sudden are finding themselves at a pot dispensary, buying the cream that they rub on their old ancient knees, and that it's helpful. Okay. And one of the things, so my nieces that are grown women now, just gorgeous, smart, we don't know how they turned out so well. I say to my sister all the time, where did we get them? They're just like these incredible young women. So I was up visiting and they said, Niecy, come on, we're going to the dispensary. And I hadn't been to a dispensary before that. Mm. And I said, oh, I thought we'd go to the park and have a picnic or maybe the zoo. They were like, oh, poor Niecy. And so they put me in the car. I felt like a grandma. But you know, I tried CBD oil, Jaden, when I was having some joint problem, and I took it for 6 months. It drops, and it made a huge difference in my. And again, I'm not promoting this for people. Don't believe me, but I know several people that were friends of mine said, "Oh my God, I'd never put that in my body," as they were drinking their third gin and tonic. Do you know? I
know, right? That's funny.
They would like absolutely. They were horrified. I said, no, I did some research, and then several friends of mine, their children had gone into the business of selling CBD oil. Yeah. And it was pure, and it was the highest quality. And I did all the research, and you know what? It changed. It helped me enormously.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's a couple things come to mind. I hope that psilocybin will follow the path of cannabis. Cannabis has done the hard work of paving that path onto alternative medicines, which is fantastic and great. But there are also, you walk in a dispensary now, it's bright lights, beautiful casing, tons of marketing. How much money goes into that, right? And now it's all about the money, and it's all, and of course there are brands and dispensaries that really care about your health and well-being. And I hope that, mushrooms can go that path of, God, this is from nature. This is a gift that we can use to supplement our health and our well-being. And you don't have to go to a shiny dispensary to get the benefits. You can learn to grow your own.
Now you grow some of your own mushrooms, don't you?
I do. And because I don't have my personal drug dealer. I'm a mom of 2 teenage boys. I don't have a drug dealer on my speed dial. So I had to learn. And as I was doing my research, I'm like, you know what better way to take care of my own health and take control than to learn how to grow it from a spore. And that's what I did. And so, just for months, all I did was like just talk and sing to these baby mushrooms. In fact, I have one right here. I know we're doing this as a podcast, but I can see you on the screen, and you can see this little mushroom. It's a white albino mushroom that I just harvested this morning. This is fresh. This will go in the dehydrator. And then it'll look like a shriveled mushroom. I'll show you one that came out of the dehydrator. Actually, this one came out of the freeze dryer. This is a different strain, so it's not all white. But I had to teach myself all of this because, there's no how to grow magic mushrooms book on at the bookstore because it is still illegal. So, there's a lot of risks that does come with me being public and talking about this. But to me, this is my life work. I finally found something where my voice matters. Before, yes, I wrote cookbooks, and yes, I go on TV and I teach people how to, cook easy meals, but this really does matter. And like, I feel so called, like this is my duty. Like I have to do this, that I am willing to take the risk to spread the word.
It totally comes across in your book.
Thank you.
Now, I had pulled out another quote, and I just want to repeat this. And it's right out of your book. Having the courage to dig deeper into yourself. Okay. This is huge. And that's why you're growing your own mushrooms, which I think is absolutely, I'm not kidding. I can't say enough nice things about the book. I can't say enough nice things that I learned just from reading the first half of it. I'm going to read more when we get off our podcast today. So I want you to say the name of your book again.
It's the Microdosing Guide and Journal by Jaden Rae. That's me. And the courage, it's actually out on Amazon now. Super excited. We just launched this week and so grateful that you reached out. And last week I was like, oh, wow, this is perfect timing. My life work is about spreading the message of like, not take magic mushrooms. My message is do your own research.
That's right.
Take control. Right.
See, when you were trying to explain it to me at first, and you were talking about the journal, and then when I had the pages in front of me, which I think this is your microdosing journal. It's, but also you're talking about a journal. If all of us, I say this to people all the time, if you keep a journal, I'm so grateful I did keep journals most of my life, Jaden, because now I'm pulling from them for different things that I want to remember in my life. And especially some of the sad pages I wrote in this horrible time in my life, but I read them, I think, I am so glad I am not that girl. Okay. But keeping a journal about your moods and stuff can help you get stronger. And you can, I just want to say, people, if you're interested in this at all, to our audience, you want to read Jaden's book, because I think that it could help. When you know this, Jaden, I'm sure you have it. I have friends that live with chronic pain. It's a tough, I'm in chronic pain. So then the chronic pain, of course, makes them down. Do you know what I mean? And then they're in these depressive swirls that they can't get out of. It's like when you were talking about you were in a black hole. I used to call it the black cloud of Calcutta. Like I'd be in a great mood and all of a sudden I'd feel this black cloud of Calcutta coming right towards me.
Right.
Or as my husband said, he'd say, it's like you wake up Gidget and then you go to bed Betty Davis.
Oh.
Well, our moods, our brains, it's so important. And it's just not something that we're taught.
Everyone has this voice in their heads, right? This voice in your head, and it can be a bully. A lot of times people who are depressed or have anxiety, that voice in your head is a bully.
Oh, yeah.
And, the one thing that microdosing has given me is now that voice in my head is my ally, not a bully. And I'll say, two words are very, very important to me now. Authenticity, like I am who I say I am, like this is what I stand for. And then the second word is congruency. And microdosing has given me those two things, especially congruency. So that means the voice in my head aligns with the love and intention of my heart, which aligns with the energy in my actions that I show to people, show to the world. And those three things are aligned. And to me, that's congruency. And that was the biggest thing that I got from microdosing was, having just growing the roots deep in the ground and having that solidness and that focus. And, it's almost like if you were a tree growing deeper roots.
You are so smart. Now, I hope people have been able to, this is longer than we usually talk, Jaden, but I know this. You are absolutely fascinating. So I hope that people have listened to the entire podcast. I want to tell them that your information will all be up on our Facebook page and on our website. And also that Jaden, now that the book is just launching, I want you to come back in 3 months and be a guest, because I bet you're going to get letters from people that we won't tell their names. We won't, but I know that you can share with us information of what your book has done to help people.
Oh, thank you so much.
Love that. It would be so helpful.
Thank you. Yes, I would be honored to come back.
Now,
absolutely.
Is there anything I didn't ask you want to say?
Gosh, I think the last thing I want to leave you with is actually there's two things.
Okay.
One is I know that, when you are allow things to swirl around you and affect your mood, like you wake up happy and then you go to bed like a totally different person.
That's right.
I tell people to imagine you have a protective dome around you. big protective dome, and you can you choose what you let into your dome, and be very, very mindful of your home, physical home, yes, but also be mindful of the space, your home, your energy, right? You can let things in that you want to, let the good energy in, and everyone else, you can still interact with them. It's a transparent dome, so you can still interact with them, but they have to stay outside of that protective dome. And that when you guard your energy and you guard your space like that, it prevents you from being swayed in the wind,
Well put.
Yeah. So, I sometimes I also imagine like I'm shooting gold strands of joy and gold strands of happiness from my, that I envelop people in gold strands so that they can have a little taste of my, happiness and authenticity. And like I said, congruency. But, being very mindful of who you let in your home.
That's right.
Is so important.
I think one of the things I always loved, Jaden, when that expression that was going around is talk to the hand.
Yeah.
I have a dear friend that I've had to let go of because the toxicity just became, I've put up with it and stuff, but you know what? I'm tired of deflecting it. I'm tired of putting the energy in to deflecting it.
Yeah, it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And, I also invite your listeners to ask themselves a couple of questions. And that is, setting the intention of your life, the path of your life, and what sparks you, what ignites you, and what fuels you. So let's start with spark. Spark is like sparks set off a burst of energy. So what sparks your life? What sparks your imagination? And to me, that's like seeking novelty. So that's being curious about something. And so anytime I'm bored, I'm like asking myself, okay, what can I be curious about? What can I learn? The next thing is ignite. And that's, when you ignite something, it catches fire. So what ignites, what catches fire in your heart, in your spirit, in your soul, and pursue that. For me, that's one of my life mottos, is to create magical moments every day for other people, for myself, for other people that I love. How can I, every day I ask myself, how can I create a magical moment right now? To a stranger, doesn't matter. And then the last thing is, what fuels you. And that is what sustains the fire. And to me, I have this tattooed on my arm. This is another life motto I have. And on my arm, I have simple pleasures deeply felt. That's my fuel. That's when I turn inwards and say, okay, this is what fuels me, is finding simple pleasures and like really deeply feeling them and taking the time and blocking everything out and just really focusing on the simple pleasures.
I think your simple pleasures deeply felt could be another journal.
Yeah.
Create, Jaden. That sounds, honey, I cannot thank you enough for your valuable time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And
see you again. And people, if you want to contact us, most of the time we do get questions or we get comments on womanbeyond@icloud.com. Sometimes people don't want to leave the message where other people can read it, so then they're welcome to private message me or Cindy. And Jaden, again, I cannot thank you enough. I'm so grateful for your book. And what we'll do, Jaden, is when you come back, we'll have a drawing, and one of your book, your book can be a giveaway to people.
Oh, I love it.
We have several fabulous books, and the only reason we haven't had a giveaway is because I'm too lazy. Maybe I'll be inspired when we have yours, because I just think that people should. You know what? Mind expansion sometimes can happen even without the mushroom.
Yes, absolutely. It's asking yourself a better question to get a better answer. And that comes from Tony Robbins. And I was, Scott, my ex-husband, he worked for Tony Robbins for 7 years as a lead trainer. So I have a whole background in personal development, but he always says, ask a better question to get a better answer. You want a better answer? Ask a different question.
I recognize that. I was a Tony Robbins baby.
Oh my gosh.
I listened to Tony Robbins, met Tony Robbins a couple of times, but then we worked with Jorge Cruz, who was one of Tony's offsprings, the weight loss guru.
Yeah.
So I know Tony Robbins, but I loved him. I listened to his tapes for years.
Yeah. And I'll say, like, listen to the message, not the messenger. It's the message. Like, that's what I respect about Tony Robbins, is the message, that he has a big voice and he has a really great way to present information, new information that actually gets you to take action to change. Right. And, I don't respect him as a person personally, but I love the message. Pay attention to the message, not the messenger.
You know what, Jaden, that's part of growing up, isn't it?
Yeah.
There are many people that I've admired. Then I've met them and I thought, oh, and I thought, I don't even like this person.
Right.
But I learned something. I learned that that's, again, pick your poison, pick your choices, pick your uppers. I've learned that you just said it, pick the take the message and not the messenger.
Not the messenger. And I also say, pick the good waves, like a surfer. He's very careful which wave he picks, and he gets on a wave. It's not quite right. I'm going to jump on another one. Jump on a different wave. If something doesn't work for you, jump on a different wave, but pick the good waves. Don't just pick on any wave and ride any wave that you see coming your way. Be picky, like a surfer.
That's right. Well, again, everyone, comments, questions, thank you for people that contact us. Thank you, Jaden. Thank you, Cindy who keeps the train on the tracks. And let me tell you something, I say that every week, it ain't all that easy. Okay. Thank you, Jaden.
Thank you so much.
You're just a pleasure. Woman Beyond a Certain Age, and there's usually a new broadcast every Sunday morning, and Cindy tells people when it's going to be and who's the guest. Thanks, Jaden. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Love you.
Bye. Love you. Bye-bye.